Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here from What's Up Boomer, brand new channel. He went viral, by the way, got $233,000. Been out with a bit of a cold, just getting back into it. We'll turn the camera on in a few days, getting a new one. My unplanned Home Depot retirement job from 401k to IL 4K. Let's get into it.
Well, I'm here. We're here. Home Depot. Today, I'm talking about something I avoided sharing, but knew it was an important part of my retirement story, and that is working into my 60s or into my retirement. And the fact that I work at Home Depot, or I work at Home Depot at 60 plus years of age, 66 to be exact. I started here, this Home Depot, 3.5 years ago. It's been a positive experience. I'm going to talk about that today and maybe give you some a story that might help you if you're looking for something to go, a company to work for. These types of companies are, I think, viable options. Let me be clear. This wasn't the plan. It was never the plan that I would work 20 some years, 30 years in my profession, whether it be teaching, and then I was going to go to work for Home Depot, collect Social Security and go to work for Home Depot. Not the plan. I think, to be honest, the avoidance of wanting to talk about working in retirement is a level of embarrassment, shame even, that here I am working at Home Depot. I guess I'll throw this in here now. Remember the threats of if you don't pay attention in school, by your teachers or whoever, if you don't study, you're going to be working at Home Depot. I think back then, what I remember people saying is, you're going to end up a Walmart greeter. And I might make a video about that because that demeans the person you're talking to. But you know what else? It also demeans the person that's doing that job. And I have a story about a Walmart greeter, and it's a good one. But that's just wrong. I don't think we should be talking about jobs or about people in that way related to the job. So maybe that's just me, but maybe maybe I feel this sense of embarrassment because of just my personal experiences. But here I am. Maybe it's a reflection of what I've thought when I look at people. I've had thoughts of, look at that poor guy. Sometimes I think about that when I'm at Costco or Sam's Club, and I look right now, you look at all the people giving the food samples, and you just think, wow, that's a tough way. They're doing that not because of the love of the job. I know they're doing that because all they've probably got is Social Security.
Yeah, those jobs suck. I worked at Costco before. It's not that it's hard to work in the sense of like a physical toll, but it is mentally draining to just sit there and hand out. I didn't do the handout stuff. I was doing, when you walk by the water filtration stuff they try to sell you on, I was managing that. But just imagine trying to like cold call, in a sense, people, like cold approach them right there in the aisles as they're passing by you to try to sell some water filtration system for their home. They don't want to hear that, dude. They're doing their weekend shopping. They're chilling. They're just in and out. Nobody wants to be sold to. And you don't even want to do that job. And they pressure you with like a high sales pressure tactics and metrics and all these things they use to track your progress and the sales numbers you have and how many closes did you get. It's insane. But for the people that are doing like the greeter, you see like the old man or the old woman doing that greeter stuff, something went horribly wrong. It's not exactly fulfilling work.
This is helping them buy food, pay the necessities only bills. And so there is a feeling that of empathy, maybe some sympathy. I think of people thinking, look at that poor guy, ended up in retail in the golden years. Again, not what you plan to do. But let me just say there is a positive side to this. This is also an important a feeling that you must have ended up here, Phil, or I look at our people, they must have ended up where they are ultimately because they failed, to carry out a financial plan. They failed to be disciplined. They were irresponsible. Now, this video isn't going to be about that because I was not. I had a plan. I had financial knowledge. But that's a whole different story. Today, though, it's about where I have landed. It's about making the best of the way things have turned out. So this path of ended up working at Home Depot with my Social Security was not really a result of a bad decision, nor a number of bad decisions. It's a result of the way life has turned out. I had a teaching career, I had a corporate career, and my last corporate job, I was in a sales position selling an online education program and helping the people then successfully complete it. They found that there was a high degree of failure, which then resulted in a very high percentage of non-payment. So I said, I can get these people through it. And I was getting the people that I was helping through the course successfully. So they put me in charge of a new department that did just that, get them back involved. Well, that came to an end. I quit that job because there was a change in corporate direction. And then I was off work for a couple months.
Oof.
Well, not having savings that sustained me the rest of my life, I started thinking about what am I going to do? What kind of businesses could I start, et cetera, et cetera. When you're at this age, though, starting a business with little capital and it's less energy than.
But you see what I mean? Big mistake there. He quit his job because there's a change in the corporate structure or whatever. New management came in. You could have had these ideas of going on your own. This is what I tell you guys about on the second channel with the entrepreneurship stuff that I was saying. Don't quit your job until your side business takes off to at least have some income. This guy should have made a meticulous plan. It's common sense. He ended up here because of his own actions. So he's at fault. Okay. And he can try to, cheer himself up at what's happened because of his choices. Now you got to be at Home Depot. Brutal reality is you had a job. It probably paid well. You decided to quit it because you didn't like the corporate structure, whatever that meant, or the change in management. You didn't have some pennies stored away for a downtime like that. You were unemployed for a while, and then you were forced to go into a job like this because of the decision of quitting without having a piggy bank to at least back you while you're transitioning. Some people have a fund set aside for moments like this that could carry them for 12 months, for example. Or a guy has built up a pretty nice stash, a little bit to hold him over or to start a new business before he has to go back into the market fully. Like he'll take on a part-time job that sustains enough of his bills where he could use the rest of his capital that he's accrued to start a business. This is the problem with some of these boomers. If you ended up at Home Depot at your age, they are right to say that you messed up big time. No one's saying that you deserve this or what I mean? Like no one's trying to shit down your throat about, you're doing honest work, at the end of the day, you're getting by, you're providing some value. You got a teacher's job, that's respectable for the community. But what I am saying is you did make the wrong decision in quitting before you were ready. And you could have waited just a little longer so that you could have launched a business or at least build up a nest egg so that when you did quit, you could transition into a better job, maybe hold out longer. Because he could have maybe gotten a job that was more inclined with what his, skills were instead of going way down to something dead end like Home Depot.
When you're younger, that's not necessarily a viable one. I had a neighbor that was working part-time at Home Depot, this Home Depot. And I thought, yeah, are they hiring? I asked her, are they hiring? She goes, yeah. She said, they'd hire you in a heartbeat. And I put an application in and I got hired in a heartbeat. I ended up at the service desk and thankfully so. The people that work here, there's really no middle ground. There's a bunch of young people, 18 to 25. And then there's a bunch of old people, 60 plus. Not a whole lot in between, except the career-minded individuals that are working up through the company. And I remember in the interview, I got interviewed 2 different times by 2 people, great people. I felt like they were giving me a chance. And the second interview basically was the hiring interview. That let's find a place for you. Well, I put the application in for building and lumber. I thought, now ignorance is bliss. I thought this would be a good way to get back into shape. Yeah, it is, but not at 60. I was 62 or 3 at the time, because throwing around 50, 60, 70, 80, 100-pound bags of concrete, which does happen on occasion. I'm not saying I couldn't get back into shape. It might take a few years. Who knows what I might hurt. Thank goodness the person that interviewed me said, well, Phil, you can choose what you want to do. I recommend the customer service desk. And that just seemed like a no-brainer. I'd pretty much been in customer service my whole life. And dealing with the public and that came second nature to me. So there it was. I said, I'll defer to your recommendation. And she took one look at me, I'm sure, maybe 2, and thought, this guy, I appreciate his heart to want to work in lumber and building materials, but he's better off standing at the service desk. Hey, I want to interject here. I'm back here editing and working through this story, working at Home Depot. And two things. Number one, if you're at this far and you're still listening, would you mind subscribing, liking? It is important and I would really appreciate it. Number two, the other thing I want to say is a positive coming up about working at Home Depot is the amount of the younger people that will help you out. When I do have to load an 80-pound bag of concrete or move it, they always step in and say, Phil, let me get that for you. And then I joke around with them saying, when I was your age, I used to do two of these, one in each arm. I started part-time, as everyone does. Within a month, they offered me full-time if I'd be a closer. I said, no way. And to be honest, there was an adjustment period of actually standing on my feet all day. Something when you're younger, you don't give a second look or a second thought of.
No, that
But on
sucks
top of that,
regardless.
it's concrete
Yeah.
floor. And that was a challenge, although I overcame that pretty quickly. Well, after about 8 more months, I was working 26 to 30 plus hours a week, sometimes 40. And I thought, I could use those benefits versus what I had with the government ones. And I decided if I just added one more day here, I could get the benefits. So that was a big plus. On top of that, I obviously enjoyed working in this environment and for this company. It was a good move. Let me talk a little bit about the positives of having a full part-time or full-time job in retirement. And I even think, and I've met a few people that even have thought about doing this and are doing it, and they have a retirement fund. They don't have to work, but they're choosing to work. But why would you do it? Well, number one is the social interactions. The couple months that I didn't work, social interaction became a minimum, and that as
Mm.
much as anything can affect you, not so much physically, although the sitting around is.
Mentally, yeah. For old people where their kids no longer visit, everybody moved away, Fred's passed away, you're in this pensioner age, it makes sense. Some of them are just workhorses, dude. My father being one of them. There's just guys that can't sit still and they'll work until their last day, till their dying breath. And, they've already made all the right decisions. They still work, obviously, probably mostly for themselves, not for another company. But if you're wondering why some people still work after retirement, it's in them. They're different. Other people would choose to sit on the couch and kick their feet up and call it a day.
Isn't good, but mentally, emotionally, lacking that social interaction is not healthy, and it can really bring you down. I remember telling my doctor one time, "Hey, I'm just not feeling good. I feel I'm tired. I'm not. I've never been this pessimistic in my life before." And all he said was, "We all feel that way, Phil." I was looking for those happy pills, but I was kind of glad he had. I'm glad he handled it like he did. Well, getting this job was an immediate socialization booster, and it's been so positive. It gave me an opportunity to meet all kinds of people, not only to work with all kinds of people, uh, which is good, and make new friends, but
I think that's interesting. Um, some Gen Z might not be happy with that because he doesn't have to work, but he's taking people's jobs, kind of like that. Maybe not him specifically, but other boomers his age. Curious what people think on the fact that old man doesn't want to give it up. He's still trucking forward. So it says, anyone doing legal, moral, or honest work at any stage of life will always have my respect. Definitely, especially as a teacher. I was watching videos about this the other day, how we reward like stupid shit, sports ball players, NFL, NBA, all useless people that do nothing in society, contribute to absolutely fucking nothing. But we can't pay our teachers enough, our policemen, our firefighters, people doing real work around the community. We don't laud them and uplift them, and the way we do like sports ball players, where they have this like aura, and what would you call it? That like the kids are strung on them and their stats, and like they're like supermen. Why don't we apply that same level of respect and appeal to teachers? Because they directly affect our kids. That's why public education in the United States and the West largely that operates like the United States is absolute dog shit. We have teachers that are a joke. All the good ones are probably retired or retiring, especially post-pandemic. And what we have left over are like radicalizing nut jobs that put up certain flags, designating their sexual identity or whatever the hell, gender identity. And it's just like, you're not even focusing on the minds of young children and opening them up to the possibilities of the world and all the things therein. It's so sad, dude. So this dude, my utmost respect, but obviously could have made a little bit better decisions and your life would have been in a much better position. And, that's all it is. My second job was at Lowe's, and I initially felt bad for a 60-year-old coworker. Then I got to know him, and he was very successful in life. He owned a construction business for decades and wanted to retire from stressful work. He was happy to get out of the house and help customers. Wow. I love it when I walk to a hardware store and there are people there who know exactly what they're talking about. Retired plumbers giving plumbing advice, electricians for electrical questions. I'm sure there's some who work because they have to, but I always imagine they are there because they like to stay busy, interact socially, and help people. I have tons of gratitude and respect for all those people. You know what this is? This is actually an interesting conversation when you frame it in the sense of the nuclear family of the United States and what's happened and the way we treat families, extended families, like, just roughly 100 years ago or a little more, the grandparents, at least here in the Balkans, it's still a thing. And in Southeast Asia, really most of the world, Africa, everywhere. But the grandparents are very much a part of the family still. So for these, like, you could call them boomer retirees, whatever you want, but senior citizens, they wouldn't go back to work like this because the kids or grandkids would be taking care of them by proxy because they're living with the extended family. When I was growing up as a kid, I lived, not of course with my parents, but my grandparents lived with us as well. And my other grandparents were just a few streets down. I could walk to their house. So we're constantly in contact. Now imagine we have the modern world in America today where at 18 years old, you're basically kicked out of the house. You're on your own. Go figure it out. You move across country potentially or far away from home to go to college. You only call your parents, FaceTime here and there, and they get older. You graduate, you move somewhere in a big city, obviously not in your quote hometown. So you're multiple states away, most likely from parents. They're living somewhere else completely. You're working on your professional career. So you're grinding and you only get to see family maybe for the holidays. And then you have kids of your own, let's say, as you get older, if you're blessed with that. And now you're living with your kids in the place that you're being employed, somewhere near a city of a big corporation that you're employed by. And your grandparents now, the grandparents, they turned into that for your kids. They still live isolated away from everybody else. And now they're in old age and they feel lonely. But obviously they've worked the whole time, just like this gentleman. And like, what do you do now? Because your kids are far away, grandkids, like, oh, that's happy, that's great, but they're far away. That structure is so foreign to the rest of the world. In the rest of the world, the grandparents live with the parents who also, the kids live with until they're much older. Like if you look at the stats on Europe, when kids move out, the ages will go all the way up to like 31, I've seen. Like in Italy and shit, it's like 25, 26. Most of the Balkans is like 25, 26, 27, like that. Like the kids don't really move out of their parents' house until their mid 20s. And even then, you're probably living within walking distance or just a quick car ride away from where your family is. So the family is together almost all the time or within a very close vicinity, if not living together. That gives them purpose. Like you wouldn't want to go back into the workforce like this gentleman. You would honestly just be helping with the grandkids. Like that's your latest purpose in life. Instead of going to work for Home Depot to keep yourself busy, you'd be watching the grandkids as the parents, your kids, are off to work providing and bearing most of the load of the family responsibilities. That's just how it is. Unless you're blessed that your quote, the boomers that you've been inherited with have made great life decisions and they could financially contribute very well to the family situation in general. And then that's nice. But that's not the case for a lot of people. And in America, it's flipped upside down. And that's why we have problems, especially if, you fast forward a few generations living in that system. You have the complete disconnect between men and women. Nobody wants to get married anymore. No one's, thinking about family anymore. Kids are off the, checklist completely because you can hardly afford to feed yourself. And people are coping by buying dogs and cats. But that never replaces the true need of family. And then you have, voila, the system we have today where you have a huge swath of people that feel isolated, vulnerable mentally because of this kind of isolation and being lonely. And then they fall victim to certain ideologies. We won't get into them here, but you know what I mean. They're crazy and they're on the left and they'll believe anything that's not rooted in biology. But that's why that stuff is spreading at the rate that it's spreading. We've lost our roots to our own people, to our own families. So then it makes us easy prey for foreign ideas to take over and socially engineer and brainwash people into believing crazy shit. Anyways, yeah, I think that's what's going on in a nutshell. And that's why so many boomers are like longing for any human connection that they'll take jobs, for example, at Home Depot or wherever else boomers want to work, even though they're, financially well off, for the lonely ones that do. Anyways, appreciate you guys tuning in. As usual, boys. See you on the next one. Take care.